Hey everybody, Dan here with Pain Free You. Today I wanted to talk about this. And I think in the TMS world there's going to be a little bit of controversy here. The topic of today's discussion is, do I have to do deep emotional work to end my pain or symptoms? If you know my work, you probably know the answer already, but we'll talk about it anyway. So I hope everybody's well. Another stunningly gorgeous day. Tomorrow's 4th of July. National holiday here in the United States. Hope everybody's well. Well, I say tomorrow, but my tomorrow now when I'm shooting this is the holiday. Anyway, 4th of July is the holiday. All right, so I get this question all the time. Hey Dan, Dr. Sarno talked about repressed emotions all the time. Do I have to go back and find them and unrepress them in order to get better? Do I have to do deep emotional work? Do I have to do a lot of trauma work? What do I have to do, Dan? Come on. Emotions. It's repressed emotions, right? According to Dr. Sarno. And, my flat answer is no, you don't have to do deep emotional work to get better. Again, my perception or my position is that it's the brain's perception of danger which turns on the symptoms. Now, if we frame that under Dr. Sarno's theory that it was the repressed emotions starting to bubble up, getting closer to the surface, so the brain would create symptoms like pain to distract us from that emotion getting close to the surface, that falls under the umbrella, which I'm holding up, that says perceived danger is the cause, even in Sarno's description. The brain perceived those emotions getting close to the surface, those unacceptable emotions that had been repressed. When they got close to the surface, the brain perceived them as dangerous and created pain to distract us from those emotions. So Sarno's right. The brain perceived those emotions as dangerous, and thereby the pain came up. So there are countless therapists, there are countless coaches underneath that Sarno umbrella that says repressed emotions are it. Now, I'm not saying they don't matter. They do. But if it was the brain's perception that those emotions were dangerous, do we really have to go dig them up is the question, right? And from my own personal experience, I did a lot of that. I did a lot of the journaling, the exploring, trying to figure out what was going on. I uncovered every bad emotional experience of my life that I could possibly remember, from being little all the way through the time when I was doing this stuff by that point in my 30s. And I never found that the uncovering of past emotions, current emotions, personality types, beliefs about things really moved the needle for me. I still had pain. So I will admit, I had some emotional chaos in my life at the time my pain started. Stressful job, money problems, long commute, good marriage, but there was some issues, not horrible, but normal stress. Being married, little kid, 3 years old, living in a rental, didn't own a home, talk of another kid. And I had always had this belief that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I wanted to own a business and I was going to be wealthy. I had that belief since I was 18 years old. And here I am in my 30s. And I think the underlying emotion was, how the heck did I get here? I'm broke with a kid, in a rental. I didn't sign up for this. How did I get here? And I didn't realize this at the time. I didn't realize it until in my 50s when I look back in hindsight, understanding this stuff. But let's look at it this way. In order to eliminate your chronic physical pain or other chronic symptoms, I don't know that finding that out in my 30s would have made a difference in eliminating the pain. Because by the time I learned about Sarno, I already was convinced completely that I had a bad back. I kept on pulling it out, throwing my back out, I'd go to chiropractors, physical therapists, do stretches, all this kind of stuff, core exercises. Nothing worked. So even though I may have been able to figure out, with some guidance, some emotional stuff that may have led to the pain starting, that would not have overcome my brain's perception of danger, that I got a bad back and bending over is dangerous. So I'm not convinced we need to figure out exactly what happened when it started and then go back in time and fix that, because I don't know how we go back in time and fix that. People will say, well, you got to process those old emotions, you got to release them, you got to go back and handle your old traumas and get them resolved. And I'm still looking for a clear definition as to what exactly that looks like. What does that mean to process and, release your traumas or your past emotions? How do you know if you've done it right? Well, if the measuring post is, do I still have symptoms? You may never get there by trying to solely work on the emotional stuff. Because if you, like me, got convinced that your body's the problem, it doesn't matter if you uncover past emotions. But then again, what do you do with them? Okay, great. I can get myself all worked up thinking about some bullies in middle school. Great. What do I do with that today, decades later? How's that going to help me teach my brain that I don't have a bad back? I don't think it's necessarily relevant. I don't think it's necessarily important. And flat out, I don't know that it's necessary. So I know that there's a split in the mind-body TMS world, and a lot of people still really holding on to the emotional side of recovery. And emotions do play a part. You can still have current symptoms increase on a highly emotional day. I'm not saying they're not triggers. I'm not saying it's not involved. So in my world, I believe Sarno's right. The brain perceived those emotions as dangerous. So instead of worrying about all this work to go find them, fix them, resolve them, release them, whatever that looks like, I think it's really important to say, all right, well, if the core problem was the brain perceiving those emotions as dangerous, how do we teach the brain now in the present day, that emotions are not in fact dangerous? Simply put, we need to feel them now. Feel what is coming up for us now. We don't have to go back and recreate it in our memory and regenerate those emotions by revisiting old traumas. No, what emotions are we feeling now? And then do that without judging ourselves harshly for having the emotions. And even more, one step further, without getting lost in the story behind the emotion. That's called ruminating, right? I call that story mode. And so if you can teach your brain that emotions are safe by allowing and permitting yourself to feel the right now, today emotions, without judging yourself harshly for saying I'm a bad person because I'm angry or, whatever. And without getting stuck ruminating on the story, it's like exposure therapy to emotions. With time, consistency, practice, your brain will eventually realize those emotions that it had previously been protecting against are not in fact dangerous. And it does that by observing us feeling those emotions deeply, authentically, right? Without judging ourselves, right? Because that judgment can basically continue to show that the emotions are dangerous. So feel them without judging, and then don't get lost in the story. Because if you get lost in the story, we can regenerate that same emotion over and over and over again for, days, weeks, months, years, decades. How many people know somebody who's been angry at somebody in their life for decades and they can't let go of it? That's called rumination, holding on to a grudge, right? So I believe the straightest path to teaching the brain that emotions are safe is to feel them. Don't judge, feel them. Don't ruminate on the story. Simple. Now, it's possible That's a portion of what's going on. And you'll know, because if you have a highly emotional day, do your symptoms flare up and get worse? If so, that's very useful to teach your brain that emotions are safe, so it doesn't have to flare up on a future emotional day. But there's other things, There are other ways that we need to teach the brain we're safe. That was emotional, but we want to do it mentally, physically. We want to treat ourselves better, because if we're beating ourselves up, that doesn't feel very safe. How do we respond to symptoms? And back to fundamentals, do we understand the cause of your symptoms, right? As a mind-body condition, not necessarily a body problem, right? So foundationally, what causes symptoms? Does that apply to me? Do the assessments. Is this TMS.com? Do the assessments. You'll know the cause of your symptoms. Doesn't matter what the doctors call it. Doesn't matter what you've been diagnosed with. Doesn't matter. If your symptoms are behaving like a mind-body condition, that's what they are, period. End of discussion. Let's move on, right? And so we want to teach our brain that we're safe emotionally, physically, mentally, treating ourselves well. How do we respond to the pains? You have a tough day. How you respond is either going to confirm that the brain is perceiving danger accurately, or if you respond calmly, like, hey, brain, what's going on? We don't need that. I'm good. Just having an emotional day. I'm pissed off at this. I'm sad about that. I'm hurt by this thing. But I'm okay feeling it. Right? We can teach ourselves that we're safe, mentally, emotionally, physically, treating ourselves well, how we respond to the pain. And the last component of these safety strategies, the safety ways, is focus on living your life. That doesn't say distract yourself from the pain. It says engage in life. Do normal stuff. When you package all this stuff together, the foundation of knowing what causes the pain, knowing it applies to you, teaching your brain that you're safe emotionally, physically, mentally, treating yourself kindly with compassion, nicely, soft, gentle, responding to your symptoms as if you're not concerned, and be authentic in that, and then shifting your attention towards living your life. That right there is the formula for eliminating your chronic symptoms and pains. We experience the world mentally, emotionally, physically, maybe spiritually. So it stands to reason, if you can teach your brain that you're safe mentally, emotionally, and physically, it's going to feel safer in general, and symptoms are going to come down. So do we need to do deep emotional work to get better? I don't believe so. And I've got lots of people who did lots of that stuff. Long-time journaling, long-time therapy, long-time emotional work, long-time trauma work. Never got anywhere with their TMS mind-body symptoms. They came into my world focused on safety, consistently, mentally, emotionally, physically, treating themselves well, responding to the pain well, focusing on living life, because it's all built on a foundation of knowing the cause of symptoms, perceived danger, and knowing that that applies to them, the assessments. And when people come away from doing all sorts of deep emotional work and getting nowhere, in some cases getting worse, because it's just creating more emotional turmoil, and they come into my world and they drop that and they focus on safety, they start getting better. And many of them completely better. So do you need to do deep emotional work? If you'd like to. But I ask you this question: to what end? To what end are you doing the deep emotional work? Look, if your traumas from your past are haunting you today and ruining your life today because of flashbacks and memories and, emotional responses that are far in excess of what a certain circumstance may be warranting, fine. You may want to connect with a trauma-informed specialist or counselor or coach or somebody to help you work through that. But if you do that expecting your pain or symptoms to go away, I'm not sure that's the solution. So, do we need to do it? I don't think so. And lots of success stories are kind of proving that fact. So, I'm going to wrap it up here. Let me know your opinion. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you disagree, tell me, when you found that long-lost emotion from 3rd grade and your symptoms turned off. I haven't found those examples yet. So I appreciate you all. Appreciate your opinions on this. I'm open to being wrong. This is just my experience from my own personal of doing a lot of that work, not getting anywhere, and also working with, at this point, between my one-on-one coaching and group coaching, a couple thousand people. And so I don't know that we need to go toiling and digging through the old emotional stuff. So comment below, let me know your thoughts. And if you're interested in joining my world, go to painfreeyougroup.com. And the whole group is about implementing these safety strategies and teaching the brain to let go of the symptoms or pains. So come on in, and if not, implement from these free videos. But either way, I love you, and as usual, we'll see you tomorrow. And if you're in the US, happy 4th of July. Take care.